My journey here kind of started about, 10 years and 2 weeks ago when the tsunami hit Southeast Asia. I had no experience in the disaster relief world whatsoever, but I was incredibly inspired by the international response. It was the largest response to a disaster in recorded history. More organizations, more money had been donated and everything. And I was so inspired that 2 weeks later, I found myself in Thailand without a single connection, but a backpack full of tools to go maybe help one family build one house. That sparked 5 years of working with different organizations in different countries. Throughout those 5 years, I really looked at the way disaster relief was getting done and the way the communities that these disasters had happened in operated after these communities. And it led me to come up, first off, it's a very complicated system. It's a very international aid. Disaster relief has an extreme amount of complexities. But I boiled it down to 3 different things on the international community side and 3 things on the local community side. Collaboration. There's basically a severe lack of it. There's a lot of different reasons, but there's a lot of lack of collaboration between the international organizations, but then also a lot of lack of collaboration with local communities. The second being, it takes a lot of time and money to set up an international project. To come in as an international to a new land, into a disaster-stricken area that's very weak on infrastructure, it takes a lot of time and a lot of money. The third being is that there was a lack of innovation in the industry overall. There's a few reasons for that, but one of the main reasons was that there's really no room for failure. If you're running a business and you fail, your bank account might hurt. If you're running a nonprofit in a disaster situation and you fail, that's the community that ends up hurting. There's really no space for failure, therefore no room for innovation. Now on the local community side, realized that really the local community knows what it is they need best. They're also the best at going about doing it. And there's also this other third element to where it's really challenging. Nobody, especially after they've just been hit by a disaster, wants to be seen as a charity case. This also studied, so it was interesting because I was part of the international aid community, but I was often living and working within the locally affected communities. And this really made me look at what community is. And when you look at community, it's really defined as one of 2 ways, and that's a group of people living in one geographical location, or it's a group of people that, despite geographical location, have a common goal, common drive, common interests. What happens with a local community when there's people living in the same geographical location get affected by a disaster, you really see them take on the second definition as well and really become a complete community. You see them share resources, working together. It's amazing. Now that mixed with the international community where you suddenly have, there's all these people around the world that have the same common goal, common vision of rehabilitation in a disaster zone. And then all of a sudden they're taking on the first definition of the word community and they're all in the same geographical location. Why aren't they operating as a community? Well, that was about 5 years of looking at those things and everything. I kind of took a step back from the aid industry at all and started kicking around a new model for a different way of doing this as internationals going into these countries. And day after tomorrow will be the 5-year memorial for the earthquake in Haiti. And when that happened, that was yet another, even larger international support from all around the world. It was estimated, nobody knows for sure, but it was estimated that there was up to 10,000 different groups that came from around the world to help Haiti after this tragedy. So we kind of sat back, me and a few friends that I'd worked with in other countries, and we were like, this was the time. If we were going to launch a new model, a new way of operating as a community in a disaster zone, this was the time to do it. So I arrived in Haiti just 12 days after with one very simple concept, the way we were going to go about doing this, and that was to create physical space. Physical space is one thing that everybody needs. When you're setting up an operation with a local community, it's physical space, so we called it a resource center. So this is our center as of about 2 weeks ago in Port-au-Prince. You can't see it too well, but so we started with the basic center. It was a pretty rundown piece of property. And we started to fill it with different resources that were needed by the international aid community as well as the local community. And it really drew a lot of people into that space. So some of the resources we started to fill it with were, first off, a workshop. You have a massive reconstruction ahead of you. Who doesn't need a good workshop where you can build whatever and you have all the tools to do so? I call this our second workshop, and I'll get to the reason why in just a second. We then added a conference hall, meetings, trainings, business trainings, all sorts. Very multi-use center used by just about everybody. Computer, 3D printing lab. We do 3D printing actually in both countries, and that actually, the benefits of 3D printing and innovation in these environments is just a whole nother talk in itself. But art center, you know, the therapy, post-traumatic stress, and being able to have art in the space is a really beneficial thing. Storage units, you have a lot of aid coming in and out of the country. These are all these resources, and they go on and on, that we identify that could be shared by everybody. This idea of shared resources, lowering overhead, but also leveraging collaboration between everyone that was using these shared resources. We also started to add a bunch of other manufacturing facilities to the place. So on the roof, we had to actually go up. We've helped design a technology that takes styrofoam trash that's everywhere in Haiti and actually processes it into anti-seismic and hurricane-resistant building. So locally sourced resources, or actually what we like to call overly looked resources. So in the process of inviting all of the internationals and the locals to this space, and going back to that thing of how do we inspire or innovation, is back to that space of safe failure. So we really opened up the entire center to be a zone of safe failure, to where our opinion was that come try new things out, let's help the aid industry innovate, but let's have them fail within our four walls rather than over a community's head. And this resulted in an incredible amount of new technologies, from aquaponics to biogas toilets. We have probably 6 different types of new construction techniques, either to Haiti or to the world. And so this whole space got built up in a community way. It was really cool from both the local and the international. Probably about 3 years in, everything was running really well. Now we have all the standard statistics, metrics of impact that you might measure a traditional nonprofit organization by. We average about 7,000 visitors per year to the site, or 7,000 people that come and utilize the resources within the center. We average 1 to 200 organizations or businesses that come and utilize the center. But we also have about several dozen small business startups per year that come out of the center. So people can come in with an idea, and they have the resources, the tools, and the connections to the local community so that they can build culturally appropriate products. Well, about 3 years in, we had a little disaster of our own, and our workshop actually caught fire. So on the top left there, you'll see that was the property when we first moved in. Then we built the workshop, and then it caught fire. Nobody was hurt. But it was a huge loss, and this was a very large shared resource that both communities had lost. And the outcome of this was absolutely amazing. Haitians have a word called combit, and it goes back to the peasant agricultural movement, to where they would all come together as a community and harvest one person's crops. So we work very heavily. The center is kind of triangulated between the UN base, the airport, and the slums of Cité Soleil, known as the Western slums in the Western Hemisphere, or the poorest slums in the Western Hemisphere. Cité Soleil used this workshop a lot to build a lot of their projects, to build a lot of their homes, to borrow their tools. And so what happened after that is they actually called a combit to come and clean up the shop, which was amazing. It was to date, it's the first and only time that people have ever heard of a combit, Haitians calling a combit for an international organization. This was also a real transitional time when basically we went from an international organization to a local organization. Due to this event, the Haitians that used the space started to feel as if they truly owned it. They were no longer a guest within an international space. This was their space as well. They helped rebuild the shop. The international community helped as well. We had a plane in the air within 24 hours full of tools that the Haitian community had requested as the priority of the tools to restart restocking the shop. So with that transition of it starting to become a more Haitian-owned organization, we all know what happened about 14 months ago here in Tacloban. So this was an interesting time when Hurricane Ruby hit. was a time when the Haitians were really starting to take ownership of the organization, and we were ready to expand. I'll never forget, I was actually in the DR at the time, and I came back to Haiti to check in with our Haitian staff to see, so they didn't feel like they were being abandoned by us now expanding to the exact opposite side of the world in the Philippines. And I'll never forget Samuel, our operations director, looking me right in the face like I had a brain injury, and he's like, "Sam, you built this for us to take it over. Go." And then they took it one step farther, and these slums of City Soleil actually threw a fundraiser for Tacloban and for it. So it was a huge step forward to not only were they moved from the recipients of aid to being able to help themselves, but then they felt so empowered that they were helping people on the exact opposite side of the world. So this is Tacloban. A lot of very similar model. It's a resource center. A lot of the similar aspects. We're seeing a lot of the same results out of what we saw in Haiti. We have a workshop. One of our sayings with the workshop is that if you can dream it, you can build it. So full woodworking, metalworking, laser cutting, 3D printing, the full gauntlet of tools and technology that people can make available to see their dreams come true. We've also focused a lot on trainings, very mixed-use open space, everything from where the World Food Program has done all their trainings to the local ping pong or table tennis league practices. Same again, the computer and 3D printing lab, and then also we're developing co-working spaces where a lot of these small businesses can go, have high-speed internet, have a nice office, and just that desk to really get started, to have it be a business incubator. Now, similar to Haiti, once things started getting really clicking right along, we had another little disaster, Ruby. You guys all know about that. That's just a few weeks ago. So we got hit. We lost a couple of our roofs, but not nearly as bad as Samar did. So we not only felt obligated, but we were also pretty well positioned to go help how we could. And so we decided to make it even simpler, and we did what we call a mobile resource center. So what we did is we packed up what resources we didn't immediately need at the center for the next month or two, packed them up into a truck, and ended up setting up in Dolores, Samar, just 3 days after the weather had cleared. Very simple project of a tool lending library. We had a lot of these tools. It's truly what I think a lot of people need after disasters. They just need the means to help themselves. So this is, as of last night, basically we just set up in a public place and started loaning out tools to all sorts of different people. I think we run it with 3 people, this whole operation. That as of last night, we've had over almost 1,900 tools lent out, multiple universities, international NGOs, government agencies, and 62 different villages, which you guys would say, barangays. So, very simple. Now, still being an international aid organization, you don't know, back to the idea that community really knows what's best. So we went up there with the idea of a tool lending library. Well, the community knows what's best, and there's some other things that started coming out of that. You guys see that one yellow cord right there? That was a stray cord that we were running our infrastructure with. Somebody grabbed it, plugged in a cell phone, plugged in another cell phone. And I love that analogy how, international aid can only just need to provide one thing, and then the community will really bring the rest to help itself. Another thing that we never expected was some of the medical aspects of simply having a running generator 24/7. We actually had quite a few patients regularly that would come several times throughout the day to use their nebulizers. Father, I would really like you to meet Gringo. So Gringo, I think, is one of your next fellows. But Gringo he's a local guy, and he came to us as a volunteer. He saw what we were doing, and he came, how can I help? He was checking out tools, maintaining tools, things like this, and he saw what we were doing with the cell phone charging station, and he realized that the reach wasn't big enough. And so he came on his own, started using our center to start his own little business. This is just like 2 weeks ago, and I'm going to actually show you what he makes here. He started his own little screen printing shop right in our center there on his own. He needed 300 pesos to start to buy the first 3 shirts, and he's now has made hundreds and hundreds of shirts. Why is he making these shirts? So that he could take the proceeds, buy fuel for one of our generators, rent a trike, and reach more outlying areas to charge more people's cell phones. So where does it go from here? We're not exactly sure. It's funny, one of the most commonly asked questions I get asked is, I've been in disaster relief for 10 years, is Sam, where are you going to work next? We don't know. We really don't know. That's the nature of disasters. We do know that as long as we continue to pool our resources and operate, both as internationals and the locals, as a community, then the possibilities are absolutely limitless. Thank you.